Greetings and welcome to the Peace Operations Training Institute's webinar series. We are committed to bringing essential, practical knowledge to military personnel, police, and civilians working toward peace worldwide. To explore all the e-learning training programs offered by the Peace Operations Training Institute, you are invited to view our website at www.peaceopstraining.org. The Peace Operations Training Institute would like to thank the nations and the ministries of foreign affairs that provide the support so essential for the success of our webinars and all the programs we offer. These are Australia, Canada, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. In this webinar, Dr. Harvey Langholtz, the Executive Director of the Peace Operations Training Institute, interviews Major Don Leslie, Armed Forces of Canada, retired, logistics expert with experience on UN missions in Cambodia, Mozambique, Western Sahara, Cyprus, and others, and the author of 2 POTI courses, Operational Logistical Support and Advanced Topics in United Nations Logistics, Contingent-Owned Equipment.
Greetings. I'm Harvey Langholtz, the Executive Director of the Peace Operations Training Institute, coming to you today live from POTI headquarters in Williamsburg, Virginia, USA. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this installment in our live webinar series. Today is United Nations Day. It's the 67th anniversary of the entering into force of the United Nations Charter in 1945. So happy United Nations Day. Here at POTI, we always strive to bring our students the latest, most up-to-date, and current information on peacekeeping, conflict resolution, and related topics. And to that end, we are pleased to host this live webinar series. Several times each year, we will present to you one of our course authors or a key actor in the peacekeeping field, who will discuss a specific topic related to peacekeeping and will answer any questions you may have about the topic. If you would like to submit your question during this live webinar, either through the chat room or by email, please view the instructions at the bottom of your screen. The topic of today's webinar is peacekeeping operations and logistics, specifically operational logistics and contingent-owned equipment and the method for reimbursement. My guest is POTI course author Major Don Leslie, retired from the Armed Forces of Canada. Major Leslie has written both the operational logistics and the contingent-owned equipment courses for POTI. During his military career, Major Leslie served as an Army officer in the logistics branch of the Canadian Forces. Major Leslie was a Canadian delegate to the United Nations Working Group on the reform of the methodology for reimbursement for contingent-owned equipment, or COE. He helped create the generic list of equipment and calculated the rates and conditions of service for use by all troop contributing and police contributing countries. Don was also the logistics representative involved with the creation of an operational level headquarters at UN headquarters in New York and the UN Standby Readiness Brigade, or SureBrig, for which he prepared the initial logistics concept. Major Leslie has been responsible for planning and implementing logistics support to Canadian contingents on UN and humanitarian missions. He has been involved with logistics for the UN mission in Haiti, UNAMIR in Rwanda, and UNPROFOR in the former Yugoslavia. Don's first course for the Peace Operations Training Institute, Operational Logistics Support of UN Peacekeeping Missions Intermediate Logistics course, was released in 1999. During his military career, Don worked on the preparation of the UN Operation Support Manual, which is the main reference for the course. The course has been updated twice since its introduction to keep pace with changes to UN organizations and procedures, and has had over 30,000 enrollments. Major Leslie's second POTI course is Advanced Topics in United Nations Logistics, the provision of troops and contingent-owned equipment, or COE, and the method for reimbursement. In 1995 and 96, Major Leslie was the Canadian delegate to the United Nations Working Group on the reform of the methodology for reimbursement for contingent-owned equipment. This rigorous course teaches a specific skill set and is one of POTI's most demanding. It's currently under revision and has been enrolled in over 24,000 times since being released in 2003. Don has been a guest lecturer for the Lester B. Pearson Peacekeeping Center UN Logistics course, and he currently lives in Abu Dhabi in the UAE and is working on a governmental joint logistics program. So, Don, I am pleased that you can join us today.
Well, thank you very much, Harvey. Yeah, I welcome this opportunity to answer the students' questions directly. We get a lot by email, and sometimes it's hard to put into words all the things you want to say. So I really welcome this opportunity to speak to the students and answer the questions they've provided or will provide during the webinar. So I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Don. And I do have a series of questions. Here is the first question. It is from Ms. Halima Amadou of the West African Network for Peace Building in Niger. She's a gender promotion secretary volunteer, and here is her question. What type of logistics are required normally in a peacekeeping operation?
That's a very interesting question because the courses cover a broad span, but generally the most specific ones are things like medical services. Supply is always there because there's always material that's needed by the UN missions for humanitarian missions just to operate. They're probably some of the bigger ones is because you really can't have a mission without some medical support to assist the people working there and anybody else they're dealing with, and the supply support. The more complicated missions, you'll get into engineering and transportation and maintenance, but pretty much every mission has supply and medical with it. That's kind of a must-have when they create the missions, that those services are provided to look after both the welfare of the people employed on the mission and any of the host nation people that they may be supporting. So I'd say those are the primary two, and the rest of them kind of follow in with how extensive the logistic support is and how complicated that mission is.
Well, thanks for that. And here is our second question submitted. This is from Inspector Bobakar Musa, also from Niger, and currently serving on UNAMID. The inspector has two questions. First question is, what is the main responsibility of a logistics officer? And the second question is, how shall he achieve his goal as a logistics officer when everyone is asking for his service and wants to be satisfied?
Oh, those are two very good questions, and probably the most challenging one for anybody involved in logistics. Kind of dealing with the first one, really the role of a logistics officer, simply put, is to get the right material to the right place at the right time, generally in a condition desired by those who need it. So that's kind of the basic definition of logistics. Sounds fairly simple to do, but it can be very complicated, especially with time and right material and all the shortcomings that you can experience when you're trying to support some very vast missions with competing and difficult requirements. So that's really the primary role for a logistics officer. There's a lot of specialties involved with that. But overall, that's really what the logistics officer is there for. On the second part, that's probably the most challenging, is everybody's looking at you with their requirements and their needs, wanting you to satisfy them right now or in the near future, and that's a challenging thing to do. Probably the best thing you can do as somebody involved in logistics is to get to know the people's requirements beforehand. Not that you can really outthink them, but if you know it's coming, it's much easier to plan your logistic support and what's going to happen before it becomes a crisis. But yes, it is demanding, and everybody is, wants something right now. But if you can get them into planning, get to know what they're doing, that's probably the easiest way to to satisfying your customers and making sure that they're not all standing at your door wanting everything at once. So that would be my suggestion for how to deal with everybody coming to see the logistics officer for their requirements.
Yes, I'm sure that can happen. Everybody, as you say, is standing at your door and wanting something, and you can be the most popular man in town for a while. I understand how that goes.
Or the most hated.
Right. Well, we try and avoid that. And here's our third question. This is from Corporal Alexander Awusu of Ghana. And he asks, good question here, what is the difference between a wet and dry lease?
Oh, very good question. Yeah, the basic difference is the maintenance support for equipment. So when the UN is essentially renting equipment, when it rents it from a troop contributor or a police contributor, if they just have the equipment, that's a dry lease. It's just a set rate for that equipment for a certain amount of time. What the wet lease does is it adds to that equipment a maintenance and spare parts aspect, which obviously drives up the price. But that's really saying that the troop contributor or the police contributing state is responsible for maintaining that equipment on behalf of the United Nations. So that's the big distinction between the two, and that's where you see the rate differences in the course when they talk about dry leases and wet leases. It's actually a U.S. military term, and when we were doing the COE manual, it seemed to be, I don't know how it was dry and wet, but that was the distinction. Wet leases have maintenance support associated with the equipment. In a dry lease, generally, it's the United Nations that's providing the maintenance to keep the equipment serviceable. So, good question, and that's the difference between the two.
Well, thanks for that. I know it's a frequently asked question, so thanks. And this fourth question is from Oscar Knott of Spain, who is planning to serve with the African Union in Somalia. And he has a question and then three parts to it. So here's his question. As a logistics expert, I would like to ask you some questions in materials logistics strategies for a mission in Somalia. And his first question under that, procedures in security matters, personnel safety, safety of property, etc. And then procedures for logistics supplies. And finally, any advice possible for material logistics in Somalia, transportation, purchasing, distribution, etc.
Okay, and that covers some great topics, and the missions in Somalia, like many of the UN missions, given the local infrastructure, roads, buildings, the type of the mission, yeah, it makes the logistics effort quite substantial. So really, for those types of missions, and this is going back to Somalia from years ago that I was involved in some of the planning for. It's probably the biggest problem at that point, and I think it's still the biggest problem, is the distribution. And that's, you can generally get the material there, but it's getting it around the country, having the right vehicles and storage capability. And this is where the security comes in, because this is where, from a logistics perspective, it's most vulnerable. When the materials are moving through the country, this is when it needs to be guarded, so you can get it to its right destination. So from a logistics perspective, generally when it's in a warehouse, you can protect that fairly well. But when it's on the road, that's when the unpredictable comes in. So it's important in the logistics planning to make sure, one, that you've got a good distribution network, that your facilities can handle what's coming in. Because worked with missions that, you're getting sea containers in a mission with no ability to move them. So that comes into your planning, and to make sure, in conjunction with the mission, that there is reasonable security for those trucks and convoys that are moving materials around the country, to protect, particularly a lot of the personnel working with them, because they're always an attractive item to any side in a conflict. What you're carrying on your UN vehicles, somebody will want, and often tries to get. So particularly to protect your people who are responsible for that, because materials you can always buy again. So you want to concentrate on the security of the individuals and do that through securing the convoys. So that's where the security part comes in. For questions specific to Somalia, if it's in like the Somalia of the past, it's a difficult country to transport material in and out of. Difficult infrastructure and the environment itself, which is more challenging to logistics when you're in a arid or dry or hot climate, to protect your materials. So that's some planning condition that's got to go into the Somalia and missions generally of that nature, where you don't have the facilities you may enjoy in some other countries and have to do the best that you can. You try and then keep your supplies to basically what you need, because they spoil easily if you don't have the right infrastructure. So that's a lot of planning that goes into those types of missions, and it's really critical to keep the materials moving and keep them secure. So that's kind of I guess in a long-winded, multifaceted answer. Missions like Somalia, the things you're looking for in your logistics planning and operations. Hopefully I got all the portions of that question right, or at least right in the answer.
Yes, I think you did get them all, and we certainly send our good wishes to those serving on the AU mission in Somalia. And as you say, it's a long way out and a difficult mission, as they're all difficult. And I'm glad to see this question from Oscar out of Spain, who will be serving on that AU mission in Somalia. Don, I know that before the webinar, you and I had talked about your wish to discuss some of the calculations that go into the COE course, and also what the new course will contain to keep up with rate changes. So maybe this is a good time for you to talk about that course, perhaps your other course, and also the calculations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because that's probably particularly for the COE course, the number one questions I get is, why are the calculations the way they are, and that essentially what, as Harvey said, it's a very challenging course. That's what makes it so difficult, and it's kind of done on purpose, because if you're involved with that, that's essentially what you're, as a troop contributing country or police contributing country, that's what you're dealing with the UN. So to understand how those calculations come about is really an important issue, because it's the number one cost driver for peacekeeping operations, is that equipment provided by the troop and police contributors. So the nice thing about it is, as Harvey mentioned, there's a revision going on that course. So we're putting in place a better update of the calculations that are in it, because as good as I thought my math was, sometimes the numbers and answers don't come out right, and we're revising some of the answers. So we're going to put in place, particularly when the rates change, so that when you're looking at the rates, which are amended about every 2 years, at least the course is up to date, and that we keep abreast of those, and that the calculations are set in the system. And there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes with the Institute to bring that in, so we don't get that many errors, and hopefully don't generate as many questions. Another one is things like the mission factors, which is quite a complicated calculation. And lucky for probably most of the students, they don't actually have to get involved in it. They just would be recipients of the results. But it's good to see the questions come in, because those were challenging things at the time we were creating the COE method. There was a lot of discussion between countries on how you differentiate one mission from another. And that's where we came up with the mission factors, whether it's climate or security. Some of the wear and tear on people and equipment is more in other countries than others, and then other missions. So that's why those are in there. So I just wanted to kind of bring that out, that not trying to be mean or difficult, because that's the way the calculations are done in the system, and they're quite important if you ever get involved in the provision of contingent owned equipment. So it's good to know how it works out and how all the calculations are made. And I'll still provide as much information to help as I can on how those calculations come about. But that's why they're in the course, and just wanted to rest assured that we're not trying to make it any more harder than the system has already made it. So I just wanted to address that, and then thank you, Harvey, for bringing that point up.
Yes, I know the calculations form really the key section of that COE course, and it's important, and I'm glad you do update those. And I'd like to read now a question submitted by Lieutenant Colonel Hughes of the Army of France. And he asked the question, who is responsible for the coordination between the arriving strategic supply and the local distribution network?
That's generally a UN responsibility. Kind of involves a couple of different portions of the organization. And I'm taking from that the arriving supplies of a contributing country, and how they get them forward. So it's generally, in most missions, that's a joint logistics, joint operation type task, where as the equipment arrives in from the country, it goes through the inspections, and then it generally flows through the mission's distribution network. In some cases, contingents will be asked to move the material on behalf of the United Nations, and there's considerations for that in the reimbursement to the country. So they have distance factors set in for the mission. So if you have to haul all your equipment from the port far inland, there's calculations that are done for that. But generally, in most missions, it's a joint operation between the contingents and the UN mission headquarters.
Well, thank you for that. And another question submitted. Could you please tell us about the most challenging request or circumstance that you had to deal with during your career in terms of UN logistics?
The most challenging one, and anybody who does get involved in them, I'm sure will come up with a lot. But I think the biggest one that I remember was in UNPROFOR in former Yugoslavia, and this is one reason why the COE system came in, because the old system that used surveys and essentially depreciation of your materials really didn't take into account of how much stuff was brought into theater. And the Canadian forces, like anybody else, were as guilty as anybody on the stuff they brought in. The problem is we had to move in the mission. The mission was changing, and we were moving our infantry and logistics battalions. And there was just loads of sea containers filled with stuff that had either never been used or was no longer needed. And we had to get this stuff out of the system. The problem was it came in by train, and the rail lines were no longer available. So we're sitting in the mountains along the border between Croatia and Bosnia, trying to figure out how to get these sea containers out of the base we were in, and essentially we were sending them home. So we had to get them down to the port. So we were kind of innovative in the finding trucks, because we didn't really have trucks that could carry them. So we modified trucks and got some local trucks and put together these ragtag convoys to get these sea containers out of a mission and down to a port. So that one just kind of comes to mind, because it really took a combined effort with resources to clear this mess out. A mess we had created ourselves. But yeah, when your circumstances change and you bring material in one way and you can't get it back out, you really have to do something about it, because you can't leave it behind and let somebody else clean it up. So that's one that comes to mind as a challenging one. there's other odd items of requests that we get from missions, particularly small ones, where it's just observers out someplace where they need material that you don't stock, and so you get some weird requests that way. But that's one from Yugoslavia that particularly stood out in my mind because it was very challenging to do, and it took a lot of effort to finally accomplish the task.
Yeah, I can just imagine. It arrived by rail. The rail lines were no longer running. You had to somehow send it back, dispose of it, deal with it. I guess sometimes you do things by the book, and sometimes you just have to improvise and figure it out.
Yeah, and that's a case where they turn to the logistics staff to figure that out, because the forces themselves were moving on. They could drive to the next place, but so that's kind of some of the challenges you face with when you're responsible for the material.
Well, thanks for that. And that will be our last submitted question. So I wanted to give you this opportunity, Don, in case you wanted to sum up or have any final words before we close here.
Well, I just wanted to say that I guess it's been quite a while since we started these courses. They've just grown over the years. The interest in them, the number of people, as you mentioned, just by the number of registrants that have taken these courses, that they seem to be well received, and from the comments I get from the students, it's rewarding to see something that you've written to be used that way, and hopefully they're helpful, and hopefully they help people on missions and serve that purpose, and always like to hear any ideas of how to improve them or what's missing from them. So, and again, thank you for this opportunity to speak directly or indirectly to the students. I think it's a great advance in what the Institute is doing in this program, and hopefully look to do it again sometime in the future. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Don. It's our pleasure to have you and to speak with you during this webinar. And I'm also glad that you mentioned that we welcome student feedback. Every student may submit their feedback at the time they take their exam or any other time. They can email directly with you, the course author, and of course we review those comments here. And we always try to understand student feedback and how we can update and improve a course based on that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And let me also remind our students of our third logistics course. Major Leslie is the course author of the two that we've discussed here, but our other logistics course, Logistics Support of United Nations Peacekeeping Operations, an Introduction by Cameron Bage, who's he's had a full career in UN logistics, currently at the UN office in Nairobi. And I wanted to remind our students that that is the third in our suite. And actually, as the introduction is typically the first one people take, but we have a total of 3. And I wanted people to be aware of that. So thank you very much again, Major Don Leslie. We appreciate your time, expertise, and your ongoing efforts for peace. And to our students and viewers, thank you for your excellent questions and for participating in this webinar. This session will be archived on our website and available to students for future viewing. I am Harvey Langholtz, the Executive Director of the Peace Operations Training Institute. Thank you very much, and we look forward to your continued participation in this live webinar series.
Thank you for viewing this webinar. We are pleased to bring this webinar to you, and we invite you to view our website to see all the programs and courses we offer. If you would like to view the archived version of this webinar or any of our previous webinars, please visit www.peaceopstraining.org/webinars. They are also available on our YouTube channel. We thank our students worldwide serving on peacekeeping missions. The Peace Operations Training Institute is dedicated to serving you.